I once said during one of my streams that I thought that Joshua might end up as one of the best characters for this solo run series that I've been doing on my channel for the past 2 years. And he's probably been one of my top requests from you all for the longest time. People have been clamoring about me doing a run with Joshua for a while now. So in today's video, I make your wishes come true, and we are about to find out if it's possible to beat Fire Emblem the Sacred Stones using only, you guessed it, Joshua. And this video will certainly be an interesting one considering Joshua is a one-ranged locked high crit character. But before we go into all of that, let me open this video by rectifying one of the biggest travesty done upon Joshua. And that is by giving him his little hat in the battle sprite. Because for some ungodly reason, he doesn't get his little hat in normal Sacred Stones. So thanks to the mod maker SD9K for creating this alternative sprite and making it public for all to use. So in this run, this will be the only adjustment made other than replacing Eirika for Joshua as your main character, of course. And yeah, we get a little hat. Leave a like on the video for the little hat in the combat sprite. I can't believe it's not part of the vanilla base game. That's crazy. But anyways, let's get to business with breaking down the rules. If you're new to this series, it's pretty simple. I play on a hard mode. No glitch or exploits are allowed outside of one specific one, but we'll talk about it later in the video and I will clarify why it's allowed then and there. Other than that, I can only bring a single healing item per map, and I cannot use the convoy to bring more healing items. I may, however, obtain more through normal means such as enemy drops, villages, chests, and friendly reinforcement showing up with them. So yeah, simple enough. But now that this is out of the way, let's take a look at how Joshua should perform on paper. As you'll probably have guessed if you played Fire Emblem before, or really any type of RPG for that matter, he is part of the Myrmidon class, which as his basis suggests has high speed and high skill. His other stats won't be horrendous outside of his defensive stats, I'd say, of 5 for defense and 2 for resistance. 8 strength, 24 HP, and 7 luck are all pretty decent for a level 5 Myrmidon. It's not amazing, but it's good enough. His con of 8 will also be an alright starting point, making him only be slowed down by 2 points by the steel sword if he uses that, but with a really high speed of 14, it won't matter too much. And you may wonder why in the footage I'm using Seth's steel sword instead of the killing edge Joshua spawns with. Well, simply enough, it has to do with Brigette, who is coming up right now. In a weird way, he will act as the first real roadblock of the run, despite our high enough early stats, and that's because we'll do about 4 damage a pop with the killing edge to him, but we only have a 59% hit rate, while he'll do a hefty chunk of damage to Joshua, so hitting crits on him will be crucial in this instance. We end up getting pretty lucky and critting him 2 out of the 3 hits for a quick clear, but there was definitely a world where I missed a few of these and didn't get any crits at all, so keeping the killing edge somewhat intact up to until that point. It didn't end up mattering, but I think it was a safe bet for this moment. Now let's take a quick look at his growths to see what kind of character we can expect in the future. And very quickly, it becomes obvious that Joshua is shoehorned into the category of speedy, skillful character, having both 55% growth in speed and in skill. So we should level those without any trouble at all. The rest of his growths, though, look pretty mid at best. His defense and res both sit a little below what I technically consider the average for Sacred Stones. His 80% in HP is technically fine. Like 80% is nothing to scoff at, and both his luck and strength are on the lower end of things, I would say. And just a quick aside, I always thought that Joshua should have been given the worst luck growth in the game, in my opinion, given his reputation as having terrible luck. It would have been a nice little thematic link, but alas, the devs didn't go down that route. Null got the short end of the stick at the end of the day, which, I mean, it makes my job easier because I get a character to laugh at, but, you know, it just would have made more sense for Joshua. But on the topic of strength particularly, it's important to note that 35 isn't the worst in the game, but it's in that lower bracket. He has even less than Eirika and Combe both had 2 runs that we've done so far on this channel. So with that being said, I think it's pretty clear what Joshua will be. But it will remain to be seen if the crits and dodge can carry us effectively through the game, because that will definitely be the strategy to go down to crits, dodge, crits, dodge. The early chapter will be, as expected, pretty much a breeze given the weapon triangle advantage Joshua gets over the bandits. We will, however, make a quick stop on chapter 4, and I'm not misspeaking here, chapter 4, yes. This chapter will see the first time Joshua catches a game over in the entire run. It is bad luck. He did get hit by 3 high 40%/50% hits, so that's something, but the damage these low-level enemies managed to dish out on him is concerning this early on. You'd expect the head start he got to help, but I don't think it should be anything to panic about. I will be keeping an eye on those defense and rest level ups, and hopefully his speed can help him dodge tank more effectively before it, actually becomes a problem. The next attempt will go smoothly, and chapter 5 will be the next thing to talk about, as we have a few items we'll be looking for on this one. Mainly the Draco Shield. You get that from the bottom house since the aforementioned defense problem is still plaguing us, so we'll want that the most. The other important item will be the armor slayers, since the battle with Brigitte was kind of a glimpse of how armors will treat us, and chapter 8 will be coming up soon, and it's full of them. Finally, usually on this map, we get the secret book. It's a very important get. Here, not as much, since Joshua already has that stat maxed out of skill and speed. We will pick it up though. That way, once we promo, we can get an extra 2 skill for free, basically. It's not necessary, but it literally just cannot hurt us, so we'll do it. And it's on the way, so we're not losing that much time over getting that. The rest of the map will not be an issue, and even SAR, thanks to our newly acquired armor slayer, will be taken care of with way more ease than Brigitte was earlier. So, we finally hit level 20. Let's look at what Joshua is currently looking like as the next 2 chapters play in the background. At a first glance, this looks alright, kind of like what we would expect in a logical manner, especially when you look at his growth that we saw earlier. It's nice to have the maxed out skill and the maxed out speed, but when we bring up the averages of a Joshua at level 20, well, you can clearly see that Joshua is a little behind on most things not named speed or skill. His strength, HP, luck, and res are all a few points behind the averages, and his defense is technically right on the average given the aforementioned Draco Shield that is used in the screenshot you're seeing right now. So honestly, it's a little disappointing for now, but nothing that can't be caught up to later with good luck. And even with these stats, I'm pretty positive Joshua can handle himself, since our first hero crest only showed up on chapter 10 of Eirika's route, so that means a later promo for a solo run, as most other characters get their promo items earlier usually, but I think Joshua can handle himself until that point, honestly, without causing me that much trouble. So in the meantime, I'll skip ahead to the next significant milestone, that being chapter 8. And this map will cause me, well, as I just said, shouldn't cause me too much issues. Well, this one will cause me more issues than I had initially anticipated due to the sheer volume of lance units. And also Joshua's lack of 2 range weapons. It will slow us down in getting to Ephraim on the left side before the reinforcements spawn, because we have to take out that one archer who blocks our way. On top of that, because of Joshua's low strength stat, we'll be forced to use the armor slayer on that first knight on the left side near the pillar, because despite okay dodge with weapon triangle disadvantage, he still has a 50% shot of hitting Joshua. With a 9 damage, it's significant, to get hit by that. We'll then stand on the pillar to attract the one lance soldier and avoid some of that high potential damage once again. This will work, but lead us to taking an extra turn, and the Cavs reinforcements will spawn behind Ephraim and crew, which means usually we're there a turn earlier to bail them out. This time around, we are not. So we're going to have to rush our few next moves and hope for some luck. And we all know that Joshua ain't the luckiest man alive. The archer is blocking the way of the Cavs, so we'll do some nifty weapon dropping to make sure they don't get involved accidentally. Joshua will then get hit by the soldier for 10 damage, so no luck on that one. Kyle survives all the damage sent his way, so at least Ephraim is still alive and kicking. And Joshua manages to dodge a 12 damage from that Thunder Tome Mage, which is good, but these damage numbers on Joshua and hit rates in the 40s are a concerning problem to me in this early stage of the game. So keep that thought in mind for literally the remaining of the run, because we'll talk about it a little more on a few occasions. On the next turn, after moving the Cavs, we take out the Thunder Mage, but he hits us this time around, so we're kind of in a bad spot, and the luck continues not going our way, because on the enemy phase, we get hit by one of the Cavs. and that ever annoying weapon triangle messes with us. So that's gonna be another game over for us. Quite early on, with a character I usually consider quite top tier. As the second attempt plays behind, let's examine why he might be struggling a little here. And yes, the below average stats come into play, but I think Joshua functions in a similar niche than Garcia does in Sacred Stone. He's a character that promos a little later and seems to be struggling in odd places in his solo run. While Garcia is more of an early game option to help along your training project in the early to mid game, Joshua in a normal run can act in that role too, while also generally being able to be taken in the late game, where Garcia not as much. But Joshua kind of function in that specialist role more than a hard carry role. I think this is somewhat a portion of what this series has been showing, not necessarily which character is good and bad, but which character can tend to be more of a hard carry and which isn't. Joshua I always thought was a hard carry in Sacred Stones, but so far this run is showing me that he might fit better in a team scenario where he benefits from others around him taking out units he doesn't have the greatest matchup against. He doesn't have a unilateral great matchup against like 90% of units. It's more of it on the lower side, meaning he will benefit from having other characters that can make up for his lack of 2 range and that can take out units that would tend to do a lot of damage to it, those mainly being lance units. Honestly, this is just kind of the theory, but let me know what you think in the comments about this whole thing. We'll keep looking at Joshua's failing as the video goes on, just to see if my, hypothesis is good or bad. Because this might be my early impulses given what is going on the screen right now. I don't want that to weigh too much in the balance. So you may have seen in the background, we got a little bit more dodge luck in this last attempt. Just to save Ephraim, we get out of it with 5 HP and unfortunately no more vulneraries. We've had to use them all. And there is no way we don't beat this map without taking another shred of damage, since we have 6 more armors to kill with a huge weapon triangle disadvantage, and we need to clear that room because we want the angelic robe for the extra HP. Since Joshua's not going to get functional defense, at least HP can allow him to soak a few more hits, because it's crucial for him to soak more hits at this point. But luckily we got reinforcements on this map, and one of those comes with an elixir. So I'm allowed to trade one of those items to Joshua to help at least get through this map. So we'll be fully healed going into the second challenge of the map, the room full of knights, since that's where again the angelic robe is, so we want that item. Here the strat will be to simply use the armor slayer to mitigate the amount of turns fighting and in turn the amount of damage taken. Overall it will go well despite the high 40s and low 50s chance to hit. Joshua will only lose about half his HP, but using the angelic robe, immediately we get to increase that max HP a little bit. I end up using the second elixir after I kill this Steve here, who does 0 damage despite what I consider is low defense. So entering the final room with only one of the mages from the last round of reinforcements left, I have 1 elixir, and you'll see me make that knight come straight to me and keep the iron sword equipped. The reason I end up doing this is simply because I have 3 uses left of the armor slayer, and I'm pretty confident there's a good chance I have to use them all for Tirado, and I'm not sure how that fight will go down. And here you can see my concerns were somewhat well founded, as Tirado has a pretty decent hit rate of 45 versus Joshua with 18 damage to boot. And our hit rate still ends up being kind of low at 67 with a 15 damage, so we can safely 3-shot him if we don't miss and don't get great shielded. Let's see how this goes. So he'll attack us here with 45% chance to hit. We dodge and he great shields our first hit. We do hit the second, but the great shield does absorb the armor slayer use. So we're down to 1. We'll make sure the killing edge is right behind because we might have to crit. Here we really need to hit that 67% chance, or hopefully get maybe that 7% chance crit. Just something goes our way. We hit here and then we dodge his attack again. We're still at 23 HP, 1 elixir to go. He will heal from the throne and then we dodge again. We miss. We crit 10 HP. Is this even possible? He dodges again, we dodge, and then he great shields. He keeps healing off the throne, which is bad for us. He now hits us. We're down to 5 HP. We hit. Our crit gets absorbed by the great shield. Warforged to elixir. At least we're back to full HP, but hopefully our killing edge doesn't break here. We crit. and we hit. He's down at 8 HP, 9 uses. This is possible. We hit. He hits us back. He great shields our crit again. 7 uses on the killing edge. He hits us again. 5 HP in a dream. No crit from us. We gotta hit this. We gotta, and we crit. That was fucking insane. Wow, this fight was so close. I was a little flabbergasted. We survived with 5 HP and a dream. This literally went down to the wire, and we got extremely lucky on that fight, but our woes in the mid-games aren't particularly over. Let's head over to Chapter 9, and it's been recently a little bit of a roadblock in certain runs, and Joshua is no different, actually. In our first attempt, we'll get to make it all the way to the bridge at the bottom and beat most units, but unfortunately we get hit by an axe hit that's pretty low percent, following us having no more vulneraries with about 15 enemy units left to kill on this map. As some of my other attempts at glory play out in the background, let's diagnose the reason why this is happening. This map in my mind was going to be very easy given the amount of axe users on it and a limited amount of lance users. Like, there's still a couple, but it's not the brunt of the issue on this map. There is quite a hefty of sword units. Archers and mages will cause major trouble for Joshua in terms of Joshua having an abysmal resistance, and he won't dodge the sword units as well as he does the axe unit. And since he doesn't have a 2-range weapon, the archers kind of get to take pot shots for free, even when standing on the forest, since I have to wait out most enemies, since there's a lot of them. So Joshua not being able to answer the range means he can't really take it full advantage of the enemy phase. So we need to slowly take care of them by one, and to top that off, we have to use vulneraries, as I used Ephraim's elixir to barely make it out of Chapter 8. And I made the mistake of not picking up any of the other ones that you can get before that, which I think in total it's like 2 elixirs you can pick up before Chapter 9. So that was a little bit of an oversight on my end, but I genuinely didn't think Joshua was going to struggle this much early on, and I didn't want to take the extra time to pick those up. So I ignored them, thinking Joshua was going to be good. I guess I overestimated him a little bit. So this means you only get to heal a total of 30 HP. And while Joshua is a pretty good HP pool, he still has a very middling defense, meaning we would have enjoyed a little bit more healing if we could have gotten it. So we'll have to go through a few attempts to finish this map. And here we are at the end of the map, and with no more healing item, 3 units to go and 3 HP, and most of my runs kind of went that way, I'll be honest. I made it far, but with very low HP and kind of just hoping for the right luck. Let's see what happens. So our first instinct here is actually a mistake. We should not have gone for that archer here. We do kill him using the silver sword to not get slowed down by the steel sword, to not lose any dodge on Binks here, who we do end up dodging is steel bow, who has a pretty high hit rate. But now that he can't defend himself at all, we will go attack him with the killing edge, hoping for 2 crits if we can get it. Well, we only got 1, so he's still alive, unfortunately, and he will try to hit us with 23% chance to hit. We do dodge, so that should have been probably the thing to go. And this kind of gives us the win. We dodge a 6 damage from the steel bow archer and can finish him off. That was my mistake. I should have gone for Binks first to keep him on the axe, or, you know, that was probably the way to go because the archers probably had a lower hit rate than he did with the bow. Fortunately enough, it went our way, but little mistakes here and there, and, you know, a very close call once again. But we finally get to Chapter 10, where we need to clean up the map with Eirika and Ephraim still alive in order to get that hero crest he's carrying. So as that plays out in the background, let's take a minute to talk promo options. Joshua's 2 promotion options are the Assassin and the Swordmaster, and there's a few important differences between both classes. First off, the promo bonuses and unique skills. What we can see here is that the Swordmaster gets more point in HP, strength, and constitution, while the Assassin gets a single more point in resistance. Not nearly as impactful as the other stat mentioned earlier. All the other stats are equal for both classes, getting no bonuses in speed or skill, which Joshua doesn't really need anyways because of his really good growth. The next thing to note is that Assassin has the Silencer skill, which basically gives you a 50% chance to one-hit KO when you crit units, which does really synergize well with Joshua's high skill. But Swordmaster doesn't have a special skill at first glance, but that's not entirely true. You see, the Swordmaster class gets a passive boost to its crit of 15 points, kind of like the Berserker class did. For some reason, I thought that wasn't the case before starting making this video. I knew that in FE6, the base passive crit was of 30 at base for Swordmaster, and I had heard that they had changed that in subsequent entries of Fire Emblem. So I think I simply assumed that they had removed it entirely, but it turns out it was simply reduced. It would have been pretty illogical for them to remove that passive to the class built around crit though, but you know, sometimes there's some type of Mandela effect that happens with the brain when you truly believe in information. It's just not true. I'm happy I learned otherwise though. So with that being said, Joshua's high base and skill ends up working pretty well with Swordmaster too. And so far, I'd say that Swordmaster has the definite edge here over Assassin. But let's look at the final factor, that being stat caps, because they tend to sometimes influence our decision. And here we can clearly see Swordmaster will have the edge once again. The only stat cap lower will be skill, which is lower by a single point from 30 to 29, and that cap being lower is almost a moot point because of the passive crit skill Swordmaster gets. So it basically doesn't even matter that you have 1 point less in skill. You still have more skill, or crit technically. I guess skill is used for other things like hit rate, but between 29 and 30, you're hitting everything at 100% rate in Sacred Stones. The 4+ cap in strength is actually quite massive. If we can max that out, given the 2 energy rings in our future, I think that's possible, even with Joshua's low strength growth. It's not an impossible goal to hit, I think. So in the comments, you may be saying right now that Silencer is still more valuable than all those other factors, but I would tend to disagree with that instinct. I don't know if a lot of people had that instinct, but if you did, I disagree. Silencer can't proc on the Demon King, and that's a big important factor because that means we can't one-hit KO the final boss. Another reason Silencer is almost a mute argument here is that Joshua critting is almost already a one-hit KO on like 90% of targets. So the amount of real use cases for Silencer would be a little low in my opinion in this scenario. And there is another reason that I'll get into closer at the end of the video, so stay tuned for that. So we'll keep that one for later. And there is also a final reason that's even more important than every single one of them mentioned above and the one I'm about to talk about later, and that's that we'd lose the little hat on Joshua's sprite because of the way the sprite were done. And we simply can't have that. I don't know if the mod maker did make a Joshua assassin with a hat sprite. I hope he did. I didn't look it up, so I don't know, but I'm gonna, for the sake of this video, I'm just gonna say he didn't, and that's a shame. So we'll go Swordmaster because you cannot leave the little hat behind. That's a no do in my book. Don't forget to leave a like for Joshua's little hat, by the way. All right, so the next few map won't be problematic per se, as this part of the game gets much easier with the promo bonuses and extra levels we start gaining pretty quickly at this point. The only 2 real issues will remain the 2 range attacks being a little annoying, as at times it'll cause blockades or force us to use more turns to rout enemies. So it's a little annoying and it does slow down the progress like a lot. And the other thing will be Joshua's low defense stat, but more importantly, is poor resistance, where evil eyes and magic enemies will be real troublesome. We'll have used the goddess icon we got from Tethys, and on chapter 11 we grabbed the secret book. Even though our skill will probably max out naturally, it's nice to have the extra 2 points early. We also grabbed the energy ring from Ewan on the following chapter, and then head to chapter 13, where we end up getting stuck for a few attempts because we keep getting hit by sleep. And that rarely happens in these runs, but Joshua's resistance is, you know, bad, so it makes him a prime target for staff users. It does mean we get surrounded and game over a couple of times, so it's an unfortunate thing that's annoying that happens, but we managed to get through regardless and grab Amelia's Speedwing, since we hadn't grabbed it on chapter 9, given we had taken it very slowly, so she had a chance to retreat, and now she's back. Once again, speed should be fine, but having those points in earlier is just nice to have. And then we head to chapter 14, another pretty easy chapter, but we do get the second energy ring out of it. So we want that. These stat boosters are very important for Joshua. But I do want to bring your attention to the final part here in the throne room where Joshua goes against the 2 monks. And I want to bring your attention to the damage they're making. Yes, it's only 4 or 5, but the fact that these guys are even able to damage Joshua is a pretty big testament to how bad his resistance is. Even the axe fighter, who tends to have good strengths, are doing less damage. because these monks are usually some of the least damaging units like in the game. They tend to do sometimes even 0 damage like most other units. That's kind of a hint to keep that in mind when we look at our final version of Joshua. You know, it might be a little bit of foreshadowing, we could say. Anyways, Carlisle on the back end won't be too much problem for Joshua. He will be able to avenge his mother with a simple iron sword to add some little bit of sweet revenge or sweetness to the revenge, I guess. And that means we move on to the infamous chapter 15. And it won't actually be this hard. We'll pick up a few important items on it due to it being the desert map with hidden treasures in the sand. And there are going to be 3 items that are going to be important here, those being the boots, the body ring, and the worm slayer. I could have picked up the Metastone early in this map since I have a few more levels to go with delayed promos, so getting those extra 5% in your growths could have helped. But I didn't do it because not having to range makes it a really tight squeeze to save Ephraim on the left side when he comes in with the reinforcements. And before I finish my point, let's check in with our correspondent on the field, Null, who will tell us more about the situation of chapter 15. Oh, he's dead. Well, that's too bad. Bye-bye, Null. Bye-bye. Thanks for your work. But yeah, the Metastone could have helped the growth. But as I said before, Ephraim almost doesn't make it out since I have to take out each enemy one at a time. I can't enemy phase to take out the ranged one, so it makes it a longer trek to get to him just naturally with Joshua. And do so luckily manages to soak in enough damage for him to drop dead with only 3 enemies left, and Joshua manages to clean it up before it's too late thanks to a few nifty dodges by Ephraim. So we make it here. We do make it, but you know, I'm not making the detour back for the Metastone. It's a little too late at this point. This run's taking long enough already. And beyond that, it's not too complicated. Kalik, Joshua's old pal, who technically also killed his mother, I guess. So, you know, he gets revenge on him. He'll be an easy out, and even Valter, thanks to the Worm Slayer, will be an easy kill. So, these 2 scum of the earth will be dead, and we get to move on to chapter 16. And this chapter will not be challenging outside of the 2 long-range sages who have a pretty scary damage number attached to them. But at this point, Joshua's dodge is really good now, so we get out of this without many issues. We get to dodge pretty easily and make our way to the top right chest where the talisman is, because at this point, any help in resistance will be welcome. Please help us, resistance, man. This map does, however, start showing some of the difficulties that will be encountered late game with Joshua, and even chapter 17 will be the same, but you'll see that in like a minute. Since the promotion, Joshua has been a pretty easy character. Outside of his no to range thing, things have been pretty smooth sailing since that point in the game. But now we get to a point in the game where the enemy spam is very real and present. So he'll start taking longer to clear maps because of enemy phase. He's just dodging and not counterattacking most of the time. The enemy's larger health pool will not matter that much thanks to crit abilities, but when it doesn't proc, he will sometimes need 3 to 4 hits for certain enemies. We will also be hitting level 20 on this map, so as chapter 17 runs in the background, we'll talk about this and talk about the one exploit which I will allow myself for this run, as it'll come in handy in like a chapter. So, is this Joshua any good? Well, yes and no. We hit our max in HP, strength, and skill. Yes, that's good. Whereas usually Joshua doesn't max out, 2 of those being HP and strength, so that's good. But we did use stat boosters to make up the difference, but you know, we'll take that as a win. I would consider our defense average given we used a Draco shield, but our luck with the same logic is like a point below average, so nothing crazy over here. But the big problem here is Joshua's speed and res. And keep in mind, both Speedwing and Talisman were used here, which means we are 5 points behind on the speed stat, which is normally maxed out, but we also are 5 points behind on the resistance stat, which isn't usually a strong suit, but 5 points is kind of important, especially this late in the game. So let's keep an eye on that for the later portions of the game. To top off this craziness, having 27 in speed means that with the growth rate of 55, Joshua managed to only level speed 5 times since his promo, since he was maxed out. And that feels like a crazy bad luck to me. Luckily, he has enough speed to for sure double the Demon King, and luckily for us, Adalma is only 9 weight, making it pretty easy for Joshua to handle with no penalties. Even before the body ring, he was fine. Which, now that I think about it, wasn't that necessary for him, since going forward, our weapons we will use will be definitely under his basic con. So, wasn't really a need to go do that detour, but we'll get into that a little bit more deeper in a minute or so. First, I want to talk about how we'll be able to handle chapter 18 and the one exploit I allow in these runs. If you've watched my videos before, especially the comb one, you know that chapter 18 is almost a soft lock for sword lock characters because there are 2 Gorgon enemies standing on ledges that can only be killed from range, which means technically sword units can be soft locked unless you manage to get one of the rare ranged swords available in the game. And at this point in the game, the only way to get one is through enemy skeletons dropping them in the Tower of Valley or skirmishes, and by them I mean the rune sword specifically. But the chance of the skeletons having the rune sword is like 0.1%. And if you followed the plot of this video, is that we're not getting very lucky. But there is an exploit that allows you to manipulate this drop and to make sure it spawns on the first floor of Tower of Valny 100% of the time. The exploit is pretty simple. Once you start the battle on the first floor, you simply bring up the menu and press the retreat button. Once you do that, it will take you to the save screen. Here it's important to not save. Simply reset your game and load back to save with the restart chapter button. And then you enter the Tower of Valny once again, and the skeleton on the left hand side should hold a rune sword, which is a droppable item. So here I will allow this strategy for myself to not get soft locked. The reason I allow this one exploit is because the rune sword can naturally occur by just resetting a bunch normally. So it's not an impossible get, it's just to save me time and also a little bit of sanity. But there is one caveat. As I said earlier, this can be a naturally occurring event. I do try to get it normally beforehand for about 10-ish real life minutes. So I reset my game normally for about 10 minutes in real life. Then that adds on some time to the in-game timer. And you may wonder why I do that, and it's because I've had to grab the rune sword before in the Colm and Gilliam runs. For both of those runs, I've tried to get the rune sword legitimately at first. With Gilliam, I did succeed luckily. With Colm, I did not and had to use the glitch. So to keep times fair in the tier list at the end of the video, I tack on this little bit of extra time since it kind of acts as a penalty on having to use a glitch or at least having to be soft locked normally without using Valny. It does showcase the fact that sword users are a little bit less potent for solo runs in a more visual way with it having the time tacked on to the final time. The other limitation I add to myself is if the rune sword is obtained through the use of the glitch, I can only use it to kill the 2 Gorgons on chapter 18. No other units it can be used against. If I would have gotten it the normal way, I would have allowed myself to use it fully because I then tend to think it's legit. You know, I did get it within normal means. This is something I did not do in the Colm run, but thanks to y'all's feedback in the comments of the video, I decided to make this adjustment here. So just know that your feedback is always read and taken into account. So thank you for keeping me honest about these runs and making sure that everything is above board. I do appreciate that. All right, as we head into chapter 18, let me tell you something else that I finally get to do, and that is only use Killing Edge as a sword for the rest of the run. Yay, we did it. Congratulations to us. We get to go to Crit City over here. Well, at least like mostly. See, when I do these solo runs, I tend to always have a crap load of money since I can sell anything the character doesn't immediately need. And on chapter 17, the overworld shop sells killer weapons. So with all the cash I have amassed so far, I just make sure Joshua is almost in a state of permacrit by giving him enough Killing Edge to make any Swordmaster blush.
This for me?
And this also goes back to the point I was making earlier concerning my body ring actually being kind of useless since Killing Edge will be the only weapon I use going forward and they weigh 7 weight. So the body ring doesn't come in handy like at all. Chapter 18 ends up going pretty well. Joshua never gets hit by stone a single time. He dodges most of the damage too thanks to his great avoid, and the only time where we get a little helper on conserving elixir is when we kill the second ledge Gorgon, since the rune sword has a life draining property, meaning it heals the damage it dishes out, so we get to top that health off like that once, but other than that, nothing really significant happens here. And Joshua handles the map overall pretty well, critting Gorgons right into oblivion, taking them right to Crit City, baby. The one thing I think I had forgotten about is to use a Dalma on this map, because I did use pure water for the extra resistant in some instances, but for some reason I'd forgotten that the Sacred Twin weapon that is specifically tuned to Joshua actually gives a passive of +5 resistance, which would have made Gorgons less scary in terms of damage, but for some reason I forgot about it in the moment. It didn't even end up mattering, all because he cleaned all this up pretty nicely thanks to all the nice crits. Chapter 19 is also ends up being a breeze thanks to crits, allowing Joshua to pave his path to Reeve quickly and end the map in only a couple of turns. So yeah, the crit machine is on the hunt, taking everybody to Crit City, and we love it. But chapter 20 might be a little bit of a different story. I won't sugarcoat it, this chapter was a pain in my ass. And not in a man, Joshua sucks here kind of way, but more in a there's a shitload of enemy here kind of way. And once again, I know I sound like a broken record here. Joshua suffers from the lack of 2-range weapon. Getting a bunch of crit is helping and really fun, but it doesn't allow us to pierce through the mass of enemies that start spawning once you reach Morva. If you've watched the Comb video, you remember me being stuck in the exact same spot in that video. I had always speculated this was due to a mistake, but it seems with the multiple attempts with Joshua, this is kind of how things go on this map with sword locked units. Since a lot of enemies on this map have a ranged option, they'll end up creating a perimeter around the unit and you'll have to fight your way through those units. The problem here being that this map throws a ton of reinforcements your way up until turn 28 and up to 4 turns in a row once you've passed a certain threshold. So you'll be sitting there for a bit just taking out enemies slowly. Luckily for Joshua, there is a spot where there are 2 wood tiles side by side so he can move back and forth safely from those 2 while taking out the enemies. Thanks to his good speed and decent luck, you'll also be able to dodge most things pretty efficiently. Even lance units who have the weapon triangle advantage over him, which was a problem earlier in the game, doesn't seem to be that much more of a problem right now for this map. The main source of concern is when the evil doggos start showing up and attacking because their hit rate is pretty close to 40%. And honestly, a couple of times there, I was a little worried at some point we'd get a game over. Yeah, because they just attack. They're dodgy and they do enough damage for me to be scared a little bit. But we managed to use our elixir as the last rounds of reinforcements were starting, so I got a little lucky here. But just to give you an idea, it took about 30 minutes of real life time to beat this map. That doesn't sound too bad, right? On 3 times speed. It was a tedious process. Luckily, Joshua with Adalma does enough damage to 1 round Morva. However, we get hit and are low on HP, but there is only 4 evil eyes with low hit rate left for us to care about. And while there is still a game over risk here, since if 3 of them end up hitting us, we're dead. But it doesn't happen. We clear the map. And it's time for the final chapter, y'all. First off, you know what's going to happen at the start. We'll be taking these few little skeletons that run towards you, begging to die, to Crit City. Thanks to the killing edges, and I just love that animation, man. I just can't get enough of it. Which, by the way, we'll keep using those weapons until we need Adalma. And speaking of needing Adalma, our first real challenge will definitely need Adalma. Thanks, Mr. Zombie Dragon, who, unlike Morva, will actually be a 3-hit. Damn, they boosted that Zombie Dragon up, right? That's crazy. Is it the HP that's more, or is it the defense? Which one is it? And he, on the other hand, actually 2-shots Joshua. What that means is we have to dodge at least one of his attack, or else we're cooked. Like, literally, since he's a dragon, you know, and dragons breathe a fire thing, and that's how you cook things. It's like heat. Well, I guess in this case, it's not really fire, but wretched air, which I guess is some noxious fumes. Would it still cook us in that scenario? It doesn't matter. I digress. Joshua just died. The first time around, he just dies, unfortunately. He got cooked. Because the dragon has 64% hit rate, and dodging that will be an interesting challenge, so we'll give it another go. There's also the possibility to get a crit instead of dodging, given that 25% chance that we have. So that's something else that can be a possibility, and that's exactly what happens here on our second try. Well, not on the first hit, but our second hit, meaning we're pretty much sure to get to Lyon. Yay! Good news for us. We'll have to use the elixir beforehand and be down to 2, but we'll manage to get through the next portion of the game. The Davgol will be a little bit of an annoyance, those that spawn on the left-hand side, that is, since their hit rate is in the 40 with steel lances that do some nice damage to us, but we only get hit by 1 of them before we move to the Gorgons and Lyon. And that will be an interesting challenge, so we equip Adalma. I remembered about the passive this time. And we also use pure water to minimize the incoming damage. And here we managed to dodge 2 out of the 3 attacks. Despite virtually plus 10 res total, their damage is still quite significant, I find. It just kind of goes to show how shit Joshua's resistance has been this entire time. And now it's coming in as like a big problem. We can't get hit by much of the magic damage. So I decided to play it a little risky and bank on his dodging, because in the second half of the game, it has not disappointed me. And I hope that he dodges the long range shadow shot. And I decide not to heal right away and take out each Gorgon individually. And even the Stone's Gorgon will have a pretty low hit rate of 19%, so I'm not too worried there. But we will also need to take care of the evil doggos on the left side. Once we get in their range, they'll start attacking us, and they have a pretty good hit rate. Luckily, the Killing Edge doesn't disappoint again and takes them out to Crit City. And with killing all the potential units around Lyon, we now have 10 HP remaining, forcing us to use our second elixir, which feels a little bad given how tight it'll be to beat the Demon King with a single elixir in our back pocket. But let's start with beating Lyon first, and we'll deal with other problems later. And the crazy part about Lyon is that even with, once again, virtually plus 10 res thanks to the Pure Water and Adalma combo, he does over half our HP, which again shows how bad Joshua's resistance truly is. So we can't get him twice by him. We can't even take 2 hits. We can only tank 1, and then we gotta hope for some sort of luck. We also have to deal with 75% hit rate, which is crazy high. So dodging won't be a reliable strategy. And that's not the end of our worries, as our damage is only 15 with Adalma, but luckily we have a 24% crit chance, right? Let's cross our finger here. And of course, no crits on our first attack. So we'll use our last elixir chance to heal up to make sure we can kind of get past Lyon. That means we'll probably have to have no healing item for the Demon King. That's going to be interesting, but that's a problem for in a little bit. So here I actually make a mistake. I switch to the Killing Edge to try to get a crit. With 6 damage, that's like 18 damage. So 3 more than originally with Adalma. The reason that is a mistake is because I panicked a little. I think I just got really panicked about the damage and didn't do the very, very easy math and did not follow my multiplication tables, which I learned when I was a child. Adalma with 3 hits would have killed outright because it did 15 damage and he has 45 HP left. Yeah, I'm dumb. Literally would not win on Are You Smarter Than a 5th Grader? Like, I would literally lose, clearly. Because if I would have enemy faced, I would have doubled him, hit him twice, and then on my face could have just taken him out. But here I decided to take risks because that's much more fun. But it ends up being okay because I get that sweet 75% dodge and a crit. And now I switch to Adalma for the kill and get another sweet dodge and a crit to finish him off in style. So little misplays, but it's all good in the end of the day because Joshua ends up taking Lyon to Crit City to finish him off in style. And folks, it's officially Demon King time. No more potion, one cool looking little hat, and a dream. Can we do this? Look, I'm gonna be honest with you guys. I don't think we can, but we'll give it a shot anyways. And we will actually pause on this screen right here because I want to bring your attention to something quite important here that I alluded to earlier when it came to promo choices. And it's the final reason why Swordmaster is so much superior to Assassin for this challenge. While Silencer can't proc against the Demon King, as previously highlighted, the Swordmaster's passive 15 plus crit makes it one of the only 2 classes that can actually crit against the Demon King with a weapon that has 0 crit modifier on it. If he has Demon Light equipped, of course, because it gives him that boost to luck of plus 10. The other class that can do it is Berserker for the exact same reason. And the only other character outside of that could do it is Myrrh, due to the Dragonstone being busted as hell, giving a bunch of skill and then having a 15 crit on the weapon innate. It's OP. This is also why, if you're a longtime watcher of this series, you may have noticed that we don't often bank on crits for this particular fight, since it's more often than not actually just not available for the Demon King. Outside of the previously mentioned classes, the only other potential time you may have seen a small amount of crit is when we use Excalibur as a legendary weapon, since that has a plus 10 crit built into the weapon. But that character will need a pretty good skill stat to have access to crit, and even then it's going to be lower than 10. So, usually we don't talk that much about it. So that makes Swordmaster actually specifically well-suited class and pretty unique for this exact scenario. So banking on a crit doesn't become a reliable strategy, but it can become a better way to get out of the problem we have right now of low bases and poor defensive stat that Joshua is facing. As you can see here, Joshua gets killed in 2 hits by the Demon King, kind of like earlier, and he only has 40% chance to dodge. So let's see what happens, I guess. Hopefully it goes our way. And we attack with Adalma, 24 damage, 13 chance to crit, 60% chance to get hit. We hit him once. He misses his attack, and we hit him twice. No crit, but we did get our 2 hits in, so that's good. Even though we don't have any potions, he's down to 72 HP, and now we got a choice to make. We could attack him now and maybe bank for the crit, but that's pretty unsafe given that there's a bunch of other enemies around, so we might not dodge everyone. So what I will do here is I will go kill the reinforcements around. The reason being, I'd rather try to deal with the Demon King mano a mano here, because while the spiders don't have a great hit rate as you're seeing right now, the others might be a problem if I have to dodge the Demon King attack. And then two, I kill the Killing Edge guy here. The Killer Bow Skeleton does crit me, the first one. The second one doesn't. Good. It's because I took off the Hopland Guard as a mistake. I forgot to equip it. Damn, that was unlucky. That was an unlucky crit to hit. But we have 42 HP, which means we can still tank that one hit and hope we get either crit or that 60% dodge chance to proc again. The rest of the enemies here will be pretty academic. It won't be much of a problem to take out. So we'll skip ahead to our one-on-one with the Demon King. Can we get it in our first try? Will we get lucky or will we get unlucky here? All right, 42 HP, no healing items, Adalma 24. Can we get a crit here? Can we take him to Crit City? And we do, which means we one-tap with Joshua the Demon King here. We kill him in our first try. We took him to Crit City and we won. Thank you, Joshua. It ended up being all in the power of the little hat. Leave a like for the little hat once again. I'm pretty sure it brought us extra luck. And that was something of a run, man. Joshua, while his latter half was much easier in terms of dispatching enemy, he still suffered from the usual problems sword users suffer from, since they can't two-range at all. And he had a pretty weak early game overall, which was not something I expected seeing, so I'm a little miffed about Joshua here. On the other hand, his low-ish res basically didn't come into account for the later half, where it usually does become a problem. Leon was a little bit of an annoyance there, like he did take some health off of us, but realistically the res could have been much more of an issue in the Gorgon chapter and didn't play that much of a part. So I'm kind of happy of how the ending went. He was a pretty reliable dodge tank, and that was showcased in this video, I think. And we had a pretty smooth rise beating Leon the Demon King in the first try. Again, Demon King, same thing, is low defense. We got lucky. It didn't end up being much of a factor. It could have been much more of a factor in a roadblock, but our crit was high enough that at some point we were going to hit a crit on the Demon King. So I don't think it was that much of an issue. These crit-based units can be very hard to evaluate because it's literally a coin toss if things go your way or not. So it does become a little bit more of a mental exercise to evaluate them well. But his time and turn count, I have to say, were pretty awful. With 532 turns in 10 hours and 53 minutes, those are pretty abysmal times and turn counts. Technically on paper, worse than Garcia. But I will say that's only on paper. Joshua felt 10 times easier than Garcia. That was like most units did. But this run still struggled in some of the same place as Garcia, mainly chapter 9. Just taking into account the fact that Joshua was this close to him in terms of number with 0 2-range option, just kind of goes to show how bad Garcia actually was, because having a hand axe is pretty much a cheat code in Sacred Zones. And of course, Joshua did much better than Colm, kind of a better unit for fighting overall. And it didn't require any resets at all. So it's a tough placement, but I'll place him above Gilliam, even though Gilliam had a better turn count. I feel like Gilliam struggled in many more places and actually got locked at the end, so why we had to reset. I think Joshua had a much more smooth run overall, with glaring issues that sword units simply just can't get over, I think. So yeah, right above Gilliam, not in the same tier as Null though, but at the top of the mediocre tier. Null still has his own tier for now, which is impressive, but he was a weird unit too, but not as weird as Joshua. Because I think overall Joshua was struggling to get through maps in a timely manner and in a decisive manner. And it's something very important in the ranking of these runs. Joshua simply wasn't there. If it weren't for crits, it might be an actually impossible run for him, or at least very close to impossible. I don't know if I evaluated him too harsh, but I feel like that's the correct placement, and I don't know if any sword luck unit will be able to get it out or above that placement. And I think there's only 2 left, and you know, they're the 2 ones that are left, Renais and Marissa, are not making a strong argument to get over Joshua. But you know what? We've been surprised before. Let me know in the comments if you do agree, and if you disagree, also let me know why. I'd love to know your perspective on it. Again, thank you all for watching. I know these videos take a while to get out, but you guys are always very patient with me and very gracious, so thank you very much. Leave a like on the video. Check out the membership below to become a member. It's the best way to support the channel and keeps me afloat through the ever-changing YouTube ad rates that are always changing and never consistent. And you get a bunch of nice perks on top of that for it. So, you know, check it out. On the topic of member, thank you to all my members, but especially my tier 2 and 3 members, those being Brawler 456, Forgotten Fox, Equipment Gameplays, Hirame, Case, Iron Wolf, No, Stylish, Rogue Arcadia, and Oliver Nix. Thank you all for supporting the channel and making this possible. And thank you all once again for watching. I'll see you with more content later in December, I promise. And yeah, stay safe out there, y'all. Bye-bye.